what we perceive as reality, what we think is objective truth. It's actually us just prancing around, selectively choosing where to give our attention. And we back talking that Vedantic. This morning I was telling a friend the story of how we see the world as we are, not as it is. This is a famous line from Eckhart Tolle, that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. And Eckhart is, he borrows the name from Meister Eckhart, the German mystic, the Rhineland mystic from a few hundred years ago. And his philosophy is, it's all Vedantic, all non-dual. Borrowed from the Upanishads, but all non-dual philosophy inspired by Eastern traditions. And that line, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. The friend that I was telling it to, they didn't quite understand. They were like, can you say that again? And so I repeated it. We see the world as not as it is, but as we are. And gave the additional example that's used often within Vedanta, that if there is a smudge on the projector, projecting onto the screen, let's say a movie screen, we spend all of our time going and trying to fix the smudge, no matter what amount of effort you put into trying to clean the screen. The representation externally of what is happening internally, no matter what you do to try to clean that screen, it will be in vain. And if you take that example further, let's say you disfigure everything, or you only zoom in on characters. You focus on characters that have more than you in this movie, or you focus on characters that are inferior to you. It distorts the whole movie, the whole projection. It's not just a smudge, it's a complete distortion of where the focus is. And no matter what you do to that external screen, the root of the issues are in the projector. The timeless example that's given within Vedanta is more of a mirror, where there's a blemish on the mirror. And we do so much to try to cleanse the blemish that we see, that we think is on our face, but we're pursuing a solution in the wrong place. I like the movie example a little bit more because it highlights how we could be so off 300 feet from where the source of the issue is, caught up in some external pursuit, thinking, okay, yeah, I got the right cleaning solution. I finally have a ladder tall enough. I got the time carved out. And I'm going to finally fix this imperfection that bugs the hell out of me in an exterior way, instead of the recognition that it's coming from us. But the only way to get rid of that external blemish is inner work right on the inside of that lens of that projector. And yes, I know that you could have an external lens. You could have an external blemish. You could have something 3 inches away from the projector that's causing that. But for this example, for a moment, let's just imagine it's on the interior, the inside of that lens. A speck of dust or a big scratch. There's this story in the Gita where you have these two kind of polar opposites, these two princes, the righteous and the unrighteous one. To reduce it down to simplistic terms, you have Arjuna, the righteous prince, and you have Duryodhana, the unrighteous, the selfish, demonic, evil prince. They're cousins, actually. And they represent the mind and the intellect. They represent the civil war in our own hearts between what we ought to do and what we want to do. And as the story goes, Krishna, this symbolic embodiment of God, asks Arjuna to go and find one evil person. He says, take some time, go and find me one evil person. I need them to do a task for me. And Arjuna says, you got it. Goes and searches the land, comes back 2 weeks later. He says, I can't find a single evil person. Even those that do evil, they do it because they're bereft of good guides. It's not what they really want to do. And even if the act is evil, they're not evil themselves. The righteous person, he can't find an unrighteous person because what they see is righteousness. He goes and asks Duryodhana, the unrighteous prince, the same question, but a slight tweak to it. And he says, go and find me one righteous person. I need one fully righteous person. I need them for a task. And Duryodhana says, you got it. Goes and searches, and he comes back 2 weeks later and says, I can't find any righteous people. Everyone is beset by evil, selfish desires. And none of them qualify as righteous people. We see the world as we are, not as it is. A specific example of this is about 11 months into selling our company to Airbnb. I saw on my calendar, it showed up on an evening around 7 or 8 p.m. the next day for a meeting at 2 p.m. with HR. I was like 11 months in. I was still learning my way through this massive company I had built. We had built our company to 100 people. I'd never worked for anyone before. And this was 5,000, 6,000 people. So this was all new to me. And I was freaking out. I was like, what is a meeting with HR mean? They didn't give me an email or anything saying to show up. It just showed up on my calendar. I had to reach out to them. Hey, what is this? And they said, we'll discuss it when we meet. And it's all I thought about. I wasn't thinking about our home, my wife, our baby to be, all of these other things that I imagine were going on around me. None of them mattered. Because I had this fear something was going to rock our stability. It felt like an eternity from that evening until 2 p.m. the next day. Turned out that someone had filed a complaint against my boss, and HR was just doing their routine research and info gathering on the complaint. And it ended up being a 15, 20-minute experience that I barely thought about ever again. But for those 19 hours, in between seeing it on the calendar and trying to figure out what it was for, it felt like an eternity. As I've said on this podcast often, our entire realities come down to what we give our attention to. Your current state. Unless we have elbow room from our body, our mind, our intellect, we identify so completely with our body, our mind, our intellect that whatever attention they go to, that's the only thing that matters to us. So in your current state right now, or 10 minutes ago, an hour from now, so much of our entire realities come down to what we give our attention to. Fear out of selfish pursuits of stability, worry, concern over our attachments, our egoistic desires, our entire realities. The screen that we think is the external world is replete with smudges, cracks, distortions. Certain things in focus, certain things out of focus based on our desires and attachments. This philosophy says so clearly that if you want to see clearly, eliminate, reduce, eradicate those desires, and then what you see, what you project, will finally be what is, what you experience, will be the unfiltered, absolute truth. But until then, what we see is what we are. What we perceive as reality, what we think is objective truth, is actually us just prancing around, selectively choosing where to give our attention. That's today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.